Always edit it. All right. So, good evening, sports fans. Thank you for joining us today. Coach Chris with Martin Skills Academy, and joining us today is Coach Jim Lake from the head coach basketball at UW-Stout. So, Coach, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So, really, just wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about what the collegiate level of basketball looks like when working with with high school players, what to expect when they come into this type of program, and really delve a little bit into your background and kind of see what inspires you and kind of helps you get through the day to day and really help you be successful in this role.
Yeah, well, I think one thing that you have to have is a willingness to stick with it. I think that goes under. I think that's a little undersold. The guys I know that have been in it the longest are the ones that kind of refuse to get out. So, I started as a high school coach. I've coached females. I've coached males. I've coached junior high. I've always been up for the task. I've coached AAU. I've coached scholarship level at Division II, and now I'm at Division III at UW-Stout in one of the best leagues in the nation. So, and I think I have a interesting perspective on basketball. And mainly it's just because of all the different levels I've touched. So, I'm excited to chat with you a little bit here.
Perfect. So, how long have you been with UW Stout?
I'm going to be going into my seventh year.
Okay.
Before that, I was a Division II assistant coach full time for 5 years, and then another 5 years in like volunteer and part time roles.
Hmm.
So that's my total experience in college. I'm going into my 17th year, my 29th year overall.
Jeez.
Yeah, I
What?
started. I started when I was 19 in college at a small private school, Mount Pleasant Baptist Academy in Michigan. So I've been at that's how I started. I started as a frustrated player. Couldn't make the practice squad at Central Michigan University, so I had a pastor reach out to me. I was attending his church, and he was like, "Hey, my son's school needs a JV coach," and it was a volunteer position, and I was the right man for the job. So,
Awesome. Well, it's great that you worked your way into this role and that you've been
yeah.
around a lot. It sounds like you have a ton of experience. That's awesome. What would you say is like one of the biggest difference between the high school and the college level when it comes to, play on the court?
I think, and I think it just kind of, I think it speaks to the next level above, but it's just, at the high school level, and my high school experience would be similar to Division II in Wisconsin. I was always at the Class B. I was also at a Class D for a while, which would be like D5.
Hmm.
So I think there's even differences amongst those levels, but it's just number of capable players on the floor at any one time, right?
Sure.
And the lack of holes. So, at our level, at the Division III level, there's usually shooting at every spot. So defensively, you're dealing with there's not really guys that you can't guard, or maybe there's one or two guys. And you get to the Division II level, and that might be there's a level of athleticism that is needed. And then when you get to Division I, there's a level of athleticism, skill, and size. And then and you hear about NBA guys talking. They talk about D1 like there's a lot of dorks on the floor.
Right.
And and that's what's amazing about this game, right? Like you get to those levels, and they're dealing with they're still playing the same game, but it's just at an incredibly different level.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just the speed alone. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, I think the defense is what changes at every level.
Okay.
So when you're looking at the biggest classes in high school, you're looking at more specialized guys. You're looking at those defenses being more uh, challenging. Like the players are usually a little bigger, a little stronger, right?
Mhm.
But I think at the D2, D3, D4, D5 level, you get those things just as well. But sometimes your sixth or seventh man is just is the tight end from the football team, and
Right. Yeah.
that you get more moldable sports guys. So sometimes those guys have a little bit more upside because they
True.
haven't worked solely on the one game like some of the guys you get from the bigger schools. So there's pros and cons to both. We
Absolutely.
recruit we recruit everything. Like we're open to everything. So
Gotcha. Good. Now, talk a little bit about your coaching philosophy. How would you describe it and how has it evolved over the years?
yeah, I think I'm going to be 49, so I'm right in my midlife here.
Mhm.
Like I think I, I I shudder at the way I coached when I was 19, 20 years old. I thought I was going to be, on the sideline someday at Duke, and
Right.
it was all about wins, right? It was young guys are always it's always about the winning, and the journey message really falls on deaf ears, right? And but with youth comes energy, right?
For
So
sure.
when young guys generally they can put 10 hours in the gym, and they probably need it to get 4 or 5 hours of a veteran guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I just think that over time, I've learned to appreciate the things that really matter the most. And I think the only way you get that is through experience and time. Yep, everyone's got there's I know young guys that are way better X's and O coaches than me, right? Like you talk hoops with them and they know it. They know it. They know it. They've looked at it.
Right.
Um, but you have to get a guy who is getting who's got a full class schedule and a girlfriend and a job. You got to get them to understand what you know
Yeah.
and execute it. And I think that sometimes can be lost. So, my I really base it on these four things: positive attitude, hard work, servanthood, and accountability. Like if we can get our guys really good at those four things, then we're probably going to be a pretty good basketball team and
Yeah, those are
probably pretty good young men. And so we really attack it that way from a off the court, in the hallway, in the office mentality. We're looking for that. And part of it, quite frankly, is recruiting some of that ahead of time,
Mhm.
like and understanding level and where you're at, and what you're going to be working with. So, I those things matter to us, and we need to be the best role models of those things.
For sure.
So,
High character speaks volumes.
yep, and we have to be the best example.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep.
When it comes to player development, what do you think are some key skills that youth athletes should focus on to become successful basketball players?
And I love to have the bravado of a lot of coaches, but I think that you start on the offensive side of the ball. Like I think the offensive skills are the hardest to learn, and so in my opinion, like shooting is the most important thing.
For
Like
sure.
if you can shoot, we can get you on the floor. And I
Mhm.
know that that's contrary to what some people say. Like you got to be able to defend and rebound. And I agree with that. Championship teams do it all. I think that's
Right.
the thing people don't get is like really good teams do everything. When we're talking about youth players and where do you start developing your skill, you start on the offensive side of the ball. Like your fifth grade coach isn't looking for a tough rebounder. He's looking for a kid who makes layups and makes a shot, right?
Right.
And
No, for sure.
and balance and footwork are right behind that. Like and I don't want to go too old school. I'm not an old school guy. I love a good euro like everyone else, but
Right.
I think teaching guys when to use things. We're not teaching a workout. We're teaching guys how to be better in a game, and
Sure.
always reminding a kid. Like I look at a guy, I'll walk by, I'll see a guy working on something. I'll be like, when will you ever use this?
Right.
If you don't have a strong answer, then you're wasting your time. Like
Absolutely.
like you have, and we want to be creative. I'm not trying to squash kids' creativity, but
Right.
like, dude, you average 3.5 points per game. I'm never gonna let you use the hardened step back in a game. Like,
Right.
so are you really focused on what we're doing and the shots that you're actually getting? And you have to master the small tasks before anyone wants to give you bigger tasks. And so, getting guys to understand a development mindset, like what does
Mhm.
that really look like? And, how do you really get better? Like, and so And then I show guys a lot of film. I show them, Curry's 10 minutes of two ball dribbling.
Right.
It's like, hey, he's the best dribbler in the world, and he does
Exactly.
it every day.
And
Like
if
he's
he's
brushing
doing it
his
for 10 minutes, you doing it for 30 seconds isn't doing
Yeah.
anything.
I think the other thing I really counsel guys on, we got some guys who put incredible amount of time in, and it's too much time. It's
Sure.
like getting you to use your time better. Like, hey, how about instead of you being here 2.5 hours, you come out of here in 45 minutes dripping wet. That's going to be a better workout.
Right.
And like it's getting guys to understand that time on task isn't the way to measure whether you're getting better. It's the quality of the rep. And
Sure.
that you don't need to be in there. Like you'll end up hating it if you're in there 3 hours every day. You won't hate it if you're in there 45 minutes because
Right.
it's not, we're going to ask you to get a 45-minute lift and then we want you to play open gym. And before you know it, you've been there 5 hours.
Right.
Like, and at our level, at the Division III level, I think we have to help those guys because they love it.
For sure.
If you're playing D3, you love
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
There's no, you know there's no monetary real value. Like it's all about the experience. So
For sure.
we're always talking to guys about maximize your workout
Right.
and get a lot out of it in a
It's not
short
about the
amount of time.
time spent in the gym, it's the
Yeah,
quality of time spent in the gym.
yeah. But balance and footwork, those are two things that I really spend a lot of time with the college guys,
Okay.
is
Nice.
getting to 2 feet, creative finishes. Hey, bud, you're 5'9", you're not a finisher here,
Right.
you're a passer here.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
get
for sure.
yourself to this spot on the floor, if it isn't clear to you, then it's a kick,
Right.
like. But then we'll get a guy who's 6'7", and he needs to learn how to creatively finish that,
Yes.
like. So, and then getting guys to understand that this isn't one size fits all.
Sure.
Like, we're going to base things off of what you can do now, what we think you can do next year, and really what we think you can do 2 years from now.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Yep.
And a lot of that has to do too with, understanding the mental side of things. And when it comes to mental toughness, how important do you feel that is in basketball? And what strategies do you use to help your players develop mental toughness?
Yeah, I think it's the most important thing. I think I say this all the time. We'll recruit tough-minded over tough all the
Mhm.
time.
Sure.
And I think there's weight room tough and there's fake tough. Like, hey, I'm gonna fight you.
Right.
Like, I'm not interested in that.
Right.
I don't mind weight room tough, but that doesn't always translate. I look for tough-minded, and I said, getting first, you got to get guys to understand what tough is. Like, I'm incredibly impressed by a guy who takes an elbow and no one knows that he got elbowed,
Right.
right?
As
Like,
opposed to putting on the theatrics after getting an elbow.
yes, like a guy who really, he took a shot, but he just got back on
Right.
defense. He didn't let it emotionally affect him in the game.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like, I think that will get me I will circle your name, and if that's the only thing you did well, I'm going to watch you again based on
Right.
that. Like,
For sure.
um, I think our job is to do more to reveal that there is mental toughness. I definitely believe, like Billis believes, that it's a skill that can be developed, but
Definitely.
it's not a bad thing to start at a place where a guy has a little bit of it.
For sure.
And I think too, for every coach, you kind of have to have a mental in your head what you think that is, and you want a guy who's already leaning in your direction. So,
Yeah.
like for me, right? Like, I like a big who will go block a shot, and if he gets dunked on, that's okay. Like that. The willingness to go is, in my mind, is one form of toughness, and he might be only 180 pounds, but we say this all the time. If he's 6'8" and he's 210 and he's skilled, well, he's not going to be at our level.
Right. No,
Like,
absolutely. Absolutely.
so what are you, we're picking guys that maybe have a little hole in that game. So
Sure.
what are you willing to develop? And so I'll sacrifice a little size for that mental toughness and for mobility. So I'll deal with the skinnier big, right?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. I'd love a 225-pound ready-made guy. Everybody would.
Right.
Everybody would.
Right.
So, you know, if you're a 6 foot guard, you better be tough. I mean, there's a million of you out in the world.
Exactly.
I don't have to pick you. So,
Right.
we're only going to get the toughest guys because there's just more of those guys available. So
Right. There's a lot
I
less
think
that
guys
someone puts out.
understanding that
Right.
if you're 6 foot guard and you're not very mentally tough, no one's going to really want you.
No, that's got to be a
Like,
major part of your game. That's got to be a major part of your your background, and just to
yeah,
understand that you have to be elite at something, right? If you're a 6 foot
yeah,
guard, you better be an elite playmaker, an elite shooter, an elite defender.
yep, yep.
Absolutely.
And I think when we talk about developing it, I think we push them in conditioning. I think we push them. We look for guys that will push each other. I think being mentally tough is being able to be coached by your teammates.
Sure.
Like not being emotional. That's a big one that I'm talking about a lot more these days. Like,
Yeah.
listen, like we're trying to get better, right? So I'm not going to be able to perfectly word everything that we coach you on. And I don't want to paint, we're not degrading people. I don't
Sure.
think anyone should put up with that. But,
No.
like once in a while, hey, you got to move your ass.
Yeah.
You got to get to this spot.
Mhm.
If we don't get to this spot, then we got to find someone who does. And
Exactly.
I think that will pull some of that out of a guy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But let's going back to a little bit about the youth. As a coach, what advice do you have for young athletes who really want to improve their skills outside of practice?
I, the big thing I really believe is every 1 hour of skill development, 2 hours of play.
Okay,
And
for sure.
I and when I say play, I'm maybe not counting the weekend in the uniforms with the adult coaches.
Right.
I'm really talking about play in a place where it's immediate. Like you work on a skill, then you play 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 5-on-5, but you're trying to put that into play right away.
Sure.
And I I love when younger kids play with older guys.
Hmm.
Like I think that develops your game because you're not you could be the best player on the floor, and if everyone's older, you're the last man.
Right.
You're gonna get the so how do you fit around that? I think develops good role players. And then when you get with if you're playing all the time and you get with your peer group, then you're going to be one of the better guys, right? So you're practicing both roles all the time. So I'm huge on that. And and what age, when you say youth, what age are you thinking in this question?
Well, I guess I mean anywhere, even from middle school through high school, I guess.
So high school, I think they've got to have some balance to that too. Like you got to put some time in on your body. You
Hmm.
got to put some time in on your game.
For sure.
And when I say skill development, maybe I'm not exactly talking about getting shots either.
Right.
Like there might be some time where you're just in. I think there's two different kinds of skill development. There's skill where you're working on things you're going to use in the game, and then there's shooting, which is building repetition into hopefully what is the anchor for every single kid.
Right.
And if every kid can shoot it, then you've got a strong anchor point, right? So I would always say shooting if you had an hour and no plan, then shots is the place to go, right?
Right.
And um,
Absolutely. And I agree with
landing
you.
onto footwork, pivot, reverse pivots, how you catch the ball and how your first step being an influence to where you're going to go with the ball and what your options are.
Mhm.
Those are the areas that I think you're working on.
Yep. And when it comes to playing, I think I always tell the athletes I work with, unstructured play, you can learn a lot from, right? I mean, sometimes I feel as though players get to be overcoached and they're almost like robots on the floor and they don't understand how to play the game. When you play at a playground, and like you said, you're playing with these older, craftier
Mhm.
guys, you can learn a lot by just going out there and experiencing it and having to make your own decisions.
It can be as simple as in one afternoon you might learn like these guys don't know anything. I don't want to listen to anything they say. Like
Right.
discernment, right? Like just, hey, you're not very good. I don't know why you're telling me this. I'm going to ignore everything you say right now with a smile on my face. Like, and then you all of a sudden you do get with a guy who really kind of shows you something where you get better.
Right.
Like I think that's so important. And
Mhm.
and then one of the things I do with my guys, so we recruit guys all over. If I got a guy who's really out by himself, let's say he's the best runs he can get are back with the high school guys, right?
Hmm.
Well, he's better than those guys now,
Sure.
right? So I'll be like, hey, when you play with those guys, well, what are we're really emphasizing you going to your left and what you're going to do there. So when you play with them, you're never allowed to go right.
Right.
Like go left every time. Like beat them at the things that you're the worst at.
For
And
sure.
then work in your skill development to keep your strengths the anchor point. And I think that's the other thing too that gets lost. You want to work from a position of strength. So whatever it is that you're strong at,
Hmm.
you want to make sure you work on that every day. It doesn't need to be the bulk of what it is. So you're a driver, you're a big physical guard, well then you better have a portion of that in your workout every day.
Yeah.
If you're an unbelievable shooter, then that needs to be in your workout. You're thinking about the game from, hey, the reason why I'm driving is because they are taking my strength away.
Right.
And your strength needs to be something that someone wants to take away. And
No,
you
that
know,
makes
and
sense.
and then counters to that. Like what is the counter?
Hmm.
So you're a great shooter. The first one is shot fake, sidestep, shoot the three still, right? Then it's the 15-foot pull up. Then it's a back door, a naked back door because they're blanketing you. The ball's on the same side, right? If you start to do those things, you become incredibly hard to guard. Then can you shoot the three off this single or this staggered screen? Or,
Hmm.
like can you how much time do you need to get it off? Like these are all building the strength, making the strength as strong as it can be. And I think if I was attacking that, the younger, the more varied the skill should be, right?
Sure.
And then as you get older and you start to understand what you are,
Yeah, your
then
game,
building
narrow
that.
it down. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
What about when it comes to team dynamics? What steps do you take to create a strong team culture, especially with like incoming high school players, right? They're just new to your program.
Yeah. So I think one thing is, it starts in the spring before we get the new guys in by we immediately start working in leadership trainings like with the guys that are returning, like getting them to flip the switch and be like, hey, Bob and Billy aren't here anymore. We need a new voice and it's
Right.
going to be one of you guys.
Hmm.
And I think you got to be nurturing that next set of leaders. Um, I think I think demonstrating strong relationships. I think it's important for our guys to see us as a coaching staff, for them to see me communicating with them, going the extra mile with them, and then like little things that I wouldn't have known when I was 22. But like my assistant coach has young boys, right? We
Hmm.
have them in the practice,
Sure.
right? Like I think it's important for my guys to see Coach Webb as a father.
Right.
Like that's as strong a relationship as you're going to have, right? Like
Absolutely.
I think it's important for them to see how I treat my daughter.
Mm.
Hey fellas, I'm modeling how I treat my daughter and my wife. Hopefully you pick up on that. If guys pick up on those things, they have a little empathy to them, then they're going to be great teammates. And I think then it's easy to preach the culture. And so, things like I look for when I'm recruiting, like how is a guy with his mom?
Mm. Yeah, for
Like
sure.
that is, if you talk poorly to your mom, I'm almost 100% out.
Right. No,
Like
that's huge. I mean, respect is huge. You know what I mean?
there's nobody who loves you more in the world,
Absolutely.
right? And that just sends a huge red flag to me. And it's like, like how, and then what do other adults say to you? So I go into a school and I know that I'm standing next to the principal. I introduce myself. I'm like, hey, I'm here to recruit Billy.
Hmm.
How's Billy? And principals will never sink a kid, but they
Right.
won't rave about a kid that they,
For sure.
like if they rave about the kid, then you're on to something, right?
Right.
Like, so, I think that's important. I think you have to do it every day. You have to teach guys how to talk to each other. We talk about this, like, talking to each other is important. In the college game, it's like in high school, the high school coaches, everybody listens,
Right.
players say very little.
Hmm.
they start out that way with us when they're 18 years old, but when they leave, they're 22, 23. They're young men. They should
Right.
be talking. They should be able to disagree with me
Mm-hmm.
uh, in a respectful way. These are real life. Like you won't always see eye to eye with your boss. How do you communicate that?
Yeah,
How do
exactly.
you know when to let something go? Like, how do you know when to keep going with something? Like, I think this is the stuff that you're working on a daily basis. And if you're not doing it, you're not working on it. So we got to put our guys in adverse situations, tough situations in practice and we let it kind of rise up. And then we like say, that's it right there. That's what we want. When
Sure.
spend more time rewarding and just praising the behavior you want so everyone kind of catches on to what it is you want instead of dealing with the thing you don't want and highlighting that all the time.
Yeah.
That's probably our biggest strategy.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm assuming then that's kind of what you look for in your team captains, right? That leadership and when you're
Yeah.
picking captains, what how do you make that decision?
Okay. So this might be a little unorthodox, but like I've never picked a captain. I'm
Okay.
as curious on the first night of the guys who walk out to that circle as everybody else. Um, I just don't think that I can pick the leader. I
Sure.
think the group picks it. And
That makes sense.
um, like obviously I have an idea, but I'm always curious, like I think you have to demonstrate. I think seniority has a certain voice to
Sure.
it, but it's not always it can be like the next level. Sometimes guys kind of grind out at the next level. Like the reason why you have a voice is because you're veteran. But we have young guys that are pouring time, effort, energy, and the older guys listen. Then you've got leaders, and then the perfect is when it's the perfect blend of guys listen and leaders and veteran, right? So
Sure.
you're always wanting that. But I think I think one thing too about being that captain is like that you're at least equally as good at listening as you are. So I always get impressed when a guy is bringing me another guy's problem. Like, hey, just a heads up, like Billy broke up with his girlfriend and he's struggling, coach. Can you connect with him? Well, that tells me two things. One, I need to connect with Billy.
Right.
But two, that Joey here is paying attention. Like
Right.
and those things resonate and those things matter. And now all of a sudden, okay, well, I'm gonna go back to Joey when I'm thinking there's something maybe underlying going on. I'm gonna hit Joey up. And then all of a sudden you start to understand, okay, man, Joey is kind of a guy, he's at least paying attention. So what kind of voice does he have? What's his role on the team? I do think it's hard when you're not one of the main guys to be the main leader. I'm
Sure.
not going to say it's impossible.
Right.
So, you're always kind of looking for leadership coming out of the rotation first, right? But I think a good team, a good culture allows anybody on the roster, including your managers, including your GAs, your lower assistants, when
Hmm.
they have a voice in the group, then you've got a good group.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, so when it comes to game strategy, let's take a little bit of a turn here. How do you approach offensive and defensive strategy, based on the strengths of your team?
Yeah, I think this is the one thing we do recruit a little bit to that,
Mhm.
like, but at our level, I think we are closer. I think our level, high school and the NBA are the closest levels because all of us, yes, I recruit my guys, but some guys just kind of, if you don't, I don't have accounting, so I'm not getting any accountants,
Sure.
right? Like there's limits to who I can get.
Yeah.
The NBA, those guys, those coaches don't get to pick any of their players. A GM picks them, and
Right.
it's who you can sign, right? High
Hmm.
school, it's who walks through your door. Though
Right.
the only level that I think can be really hard, fast system is the scholarship college level.
Sure.
Like they can be. they can be stuck in the mud. So I have to have systems that are flexible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're really tempo. We're tempo in space. So
Okay.
like I'm looking for guys that play well in space, that play up and down, that you know. And I think there's always three things I'm looking for. I'm looking for shooters, guys that can shoot, guys that will first of all make shots that are given to them. Then I'm looking for a guy who can make a shot off the dribble. And that
Mm-hmm.
would be a point guard, right? And make the correct decision. And then I'm looking for guys who understand spacing and are as good at staying out of each other's way as they are moving. And
Right.
and I think, if you've got that, then you can flex. So the last couple of years, my bigs, we've I've got one big who is more of a traditional back to the basket. I've had another big who really wasn't strong there, you
Sure.
know, but he was a great passer. So, we're flexing some Princeton type stuff, a lot of
Yeah.
zoom action. We're taking advantage of spacing that guy away and letting him be in his strong suit.
Mm-hmm.
I went 2 years ago, I had an unbelievable point guard who left me for D2,
Sure.
right? And he was a 3-level scorer and he was a nightmare in a ball screen. Last year I started a true freshman and he really couldn't shoot. So that's a whole different flex, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're doing a smidge different things to kind of get those things involved. So I think you've got to always be looking at your lineup and maximizing where they're at, where they're going, where they're going to be, and trying to get the most out of that.
Yeah, for sure. No, that makes sense. What just kind of skipping around here, what do you feel like what would be advice you would give to aspiring youth athletes, whether it be at the middle school or high school level, who dream of playing at the collegiate level? What would be your biggest advice to them?
I think I think number one, like dream big. Like
Mhm.
it doesn't bother me that a kid wants to play at Wisconsin.
Sure.
Like I if that's like dream big, like you're attack, but then you got to attack it. Like
Hmm.
I think one thing is like it's not enough to want to play at Wisconsin. Like understand what that means. All right, like go on their roster and read where the bios, where did the kids come from? What were their pre-experiences before?
Right.
Like, and then take and attack that. Like, understand that. You know, now I'm also completely okay with a guy who doesn't really follow basketball, but just loves to play it every day. That probably was me in high school. I wouldn't
Sure.
say that I watched a lot of basketball. I played it all the time. I
Yeah.
just loved the game. I think you're dealing with both, right? I think that kid should be focused on how good a varsity high school player can I be right now.
Yeah.
And if you're focused on that, then you're getting better. And eventually you'll rise to a level where now all of a sudden someone points you in the direction and says, hey, you got a chance after this.
Right.
Oh yeah, really? Well, what's that look like for me
Hmm.
now? And where do I go from here? A perfect example, like 6'5" kid, right? He might be a guard for us, but he's played center his whole career because
Right.
that's what the high
Exactly.
school needed,
Yes.
right? But maybe on his AAU he plays a wing, right? Like
Hmm.
understand where you're at in the moment and don't think that I discount that.
Sure.
Don't think that if I go and watch you play in high school and you're a center, don't think that I can't imagine you as a wing.
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
we've been every coach who comes to watch you play has been doing it a long time. We
Right.
have way more imagination than you think we do. Like, this isn't. I don't. I understand that your high school coach is asking you to guard that guy because you're the biggest dude.
Exactly.
Like, so quit sweating that.
Hmm.
Don't think that you don't have to throw up a 30 to be impressive. Like efficiency is impressive. Like
Sure.
if you're the leading rebounder, that's gonna be memorable. Like
Right.
these are things that matter. Like have an imagination, understand that. I've never, not once in my career, ever not played my best rebounder.
Yeah, for
Like
sure. You can never rebound too much, right?
I've never once, if a guy can really guard, then I'm gonna figure out a way to get him to the floor. Like those two
Exactly.
things right there usurp a lot of things. Like
Hmm.
now, if you want the whole thing, then you've got to develop the whole game. If
Right.
you've got one strong part, then you're going to start as a role. If
Right.
you're a young guy on a championship team, you're going to start as a role, regardless of your ability level. So understand that.
Right. And real quick, Coach, just in closing before we finish, and again, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. This is very helpful, and I'm sure a lot of the youth athletes can really benefit from a lot of the information you're giving today. And then, as far as like, how can young athletes and their families learn more about UW-Stout's basketball program and get involved?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is you get on our website, you go to the coaches page. My email, my office, and my cell phone are all there. I mean, reach out with a text or an email. Give me a call. That's the best place to start. I think one of the things, don't throw in a recruit questionnaire and think that that's going to resonate with me. Like,
Sure.
contact with me is the first thing, and then I think one of the things is, like, don't be afraid to get out and experience, like, go to a camp.
Sure.
Um, talk to people who have been at that place. I think, understand what you want to do and understand what whatever it is. Like, maybe you don't know what you want to do. You want to play basketball and you're
Right.
going to figure out the degree on the way. Understand that about you and say
Sure.
that to coaches. Like, Coach, I don't know what I want to major in. I do want to play basketball. I do want to go to college.
Right.
So I'll probably need a place with multiple degree programs. The 8 program school isn't going to be my bit.
Right.
Like, maybe, and then we get guys that are the opposite. Like, I only want to be an engineer, and
Right.
so I'm going to be narrowed to these schools because they have what I want. And
Sure.
both are fine. There's nothing wrong with either.
Yeah.
Um, and
Awesome.
so reach out on a personal level. That's what I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And then I reached out to you and you were very receptive to me and you were excited to do this. And I really appreciate that. And like I said, I think a lot of high school, a lot of younger athletes can benefit from all the information you shared. And, again, I appreciate your time and continued success to you and your program and go Blue Devils.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All
Thanks
right,
for
coach.
your time.
Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.
Yep.
Bye now.